Welcome to Demystify Magic with Molly and Madison.
I'm Molly, a former skeptic turned full-time energy healer and teacher.
And I'm Madison, a born and raised witch running my family's crystal shop.
And we're here to explore all things woo through the lens of both science and spirituality so that you can find the moments of magic in your everyday life and create an intentional spiritual practice.
So if that's what you're into, find a cozy spot, take a deep breath, and let's demystify some magic. Hi, friends.
Howdy doody.
Oh my God, I forgot a howdy doody. I haven't podcasted since last year, so I was so excited to steal that joke from you. I'm a little out of practice. Howdy doody, friends. I really got her with that one, huh?
Well, the best part was I was queuing myself up to make that joke, and you just slid into first base before I got the chance to hit the ball.
Oh, it's very rare I get to pull one over on you, so I'm feeling very proud of myself. My best joke of the year.
Oh.
Can you tell it's our first time on Zoom of 2024, listeners? All right, we are easing back into it this year with a Q&A episode, and you guys really came through with like an ungodly amount of incredible questions. I'm very excited about it. But
we have
first,
like our entire year of like topics now laid out for us just based on this one Q&A poll on Instagram.
I know, we just got to go through and be like, yeah, I want to do a whole episode on this, and I want to do a whole episode on this, and yeah, this would make a really great whole episode. So thank you. You've handled that for us. All of our scheduling is done for the year. But first, before we get started, Molly, what was your magic moment this week?
Okay, I have been holding this in. This is, I think, the first time I have a magic moment that you don't know what it is.
I am so excited. I've been teased about this for at least a week now, I think.
Well, because it involves you.
Okay.
So listeners may remember during our winter solstice episode, you requested that I bring you some snow water when I come down to Florida.
Yes.
And I am flying out tomorrow. And I have had this trip booked since what, like September, October? I don't remember.
At least. It's been a hot minute.
It's been a hot minute. And it has not snowed here in Maine at all. At all in that time since we recorded that episode. You even sent me a vial to put the snow water in that would fit in my toiletries bag. And then, guess what? 24 hours before I leave to go see you, we get our first snowstorm.
Oh my God, I didn't even think about it when you sent me the pictures of the snow.
We got our first snowstorm, and it was perfect snow. It's like fluffy. Sometimes you'll know if you live in a place that snows, sometimes you get a fluffy snow that's just like beautiful and white, and like you don't even mind shoveling it that much. And sometimes you get a heavy wet snow, which I'm like, I don't want to bring you heavy wet snow energy. It's just different.
I need that good snow energy.
You should have seen me out there with my husband. Literally, like, he's like, what are you doing? I was like scooping up a jar of snow. And I was like, I'm collecting the snow. And he's like, why? I was like, I'm going to bring it to Florida. And he's like, you know it's going to melt. I was like, I know.
Your poor husband. And our antics.
This was right after he like every couple of days he'll pick something up that I've like left in the kitchen from filming, and he's like, what is this? And I'm like, it's a money bowl.
Duh.
He's like, why is there a jar of snow melting on the counter? It's for Madison.
She doesn't have easily accessible snow water.
Anyway, so bestie, stay tuned. You're getting your snow water.
I'm so excited. The unspoken magic moment here is that we get to hang out in like 2 days.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say is the fact that you manifested a snowstorm, because
Also,
I was like,
literally in my power.
It's like literally, I was like, I actually don't think it's going to snow before I see you.
That's so wild. I've heard from a lot of people that it's been abnormally warm this December. And then I also hear that it's about to get freezing everywhere except for where I live.
Yeah, that's why I'm coming down there. Anyways, what was your magic moment?
My magic moment is that a little more than 24 hours ago, I just got off a plane from the only place warmer than where I live right now. I was in Brazil for 9 days. And there were so many beautiful, poignant, truly magical moments that I cannot choose one, so I will choose the silliest one to share with you.
Perfect.
Which is that where I was staying in Brazil, I don't know if it's everywhere in Brazil. I just know that in the 2 towns that I was in Brazil, there is a normal McDonald's, but there's also a McDonald's sobremesa station, which is the Portuguese word for dessert if you don't speak Portuguese. I don't speak Portuguese except for the one word sobremesa.
That's all you need.
That's all I needed. That's all the information that I retained. But it's like a small little, it's like a food stand, but it's not because it's like in a building. But regardless, but it's just a McDonald's dessert station peppered through Copacabana, Brazil. And at that sobremesa station, you can get a McFlurry, which is literally just vanilla ice cream, hot fudge, and then an entire bag of full-size M&Ms dumped on top of the ice cream. It was the best thing I have ever experienced. And I understand that there's so much more to visiting another country than going to the McDonald's. But if I talked about the other things, we would be here all day. I would have a whole episode that was just about my experience in Brazil. It was so fun and so lovely, and I had the best time, and I ate so many McFlurries.
How many do you think you had in 9 days?
I think I had 4.
Wow.
It was pretty impressive.
I was expecting like 9.
I know. I was with like my boyfriend's friends who I don't know very well. I like got a very last minute invite to this trip that has been planned like since long before he and I met. Somebody last minute dropped out. I slid in. And so I was with people that like I couldn't fully express my desire for a McFlurry. I mean, I could have, but it's like people truly, when I bought this ticket to Brazil, I had dinner with one of the couples once.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, I'll spend 9 days with you.
Yeah. So you were trying to play it cool. You were
Yeah,
like, I'll have
yeah.
a McFlurry every other day, even though I want one twice a day.
Exactly. And they were so easily accessible that it was painful at some points to like walk past it and not have one.
Yeah. So our listeners in Brazil, Madison will be coming back soon for her McFlurries.
Have a sobremesa in my honor. All right. You ready to jump on in?
I'm ready. Let's jump.
Okay. We got a ton of questions about this topic. So spoiler alert, we're going to do a full episode, but we figured we'd give you a little teaser trailer. We got so many people asking what it's like to run a spiritual business. How do we get started? How do we get clients? Like what's a day in the life like, et cetera, et cetera. We got a million of them. I'm so excited to do a whole episode on it. But Molly, in one phrase, what would you say it's like to run a spiritual business?
I like to say that running a spiritual business or like running any business is like the most expedited healing journey you can go on because like all of your shit comes to the surface. You're afraid to be seen. Better fix that. You've got scarcity. All right, we're going to fix that. You got issues with money? We'll go fix that. It's just like, yeah, it's so interesting because like, I think, you know, I mean, obviously there's outliers, but I think the majority of people who run spiritual businesses is because it's tied to their life's purpose and their path. I know that's certainly true for you and I. And because of that, that path is not like always smooth sailing and like requires a lot of like self-discovery and, you know, getting over patterns of thinking and patterns of living that maybe you've had your whole life, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
Hard agree on that one. I think there's like extra layers of that for me because I'm also doing it with a parent.
Yeah.
You know, like a mother-daughter journey. And it's all of those things. And also I want to stress for anyone who feels like this is a part of their path, it's so much fucking fun.
It is. It's so worth it.
Like that is the first word that comes to mind when somebody asks like what it's like to have my job, what it's like to do what we do. Even like I was on this trip and we were about to leave and someone said like, you know, oh, take a day, like relax before you get back into going back to work. Like that's got to be overwhelming. And I'm like, no, I like miss the store.
Yeah.
I miss my job. You don't understand. I feel like I want to be doing that as soon as possible. Get me off the plane.
Yeah.
It's the best. And gonna use this as a little segue.
Yeah, we both have exciting news in our business that
we do
very gently plug here. Very soft plug. You first.
The softest of plugs. Just totally no big deal. But right now, as we speak, as you listen, you can indeed go to shopspellcrafter.com and shop our brand new line of spell candles. I can't believe I'm saying that out loud.
Yay.
As I speak it, I'm like, oh, I'm committing. Like, we're really doing this. I can't back out. You can shop 7 brand spanking new spell candles that I'm going to list for you right now. It might take me a couple tries. I'm doing it off the top of my head. So you can shop Banishing, Attraction, Fast Luck, Moneymaker, Self-Love, Return to Sender, and my personal favorite, the candle that's going to change your fucking life, Quantum Jump.
I'm so excited about that one.
Right now at shopspellcrafter.com. This is my life's work. This is the best thing I've ever created, and I'm really excited to share it with you. So give them a looky-loo. I don't know, maybe do a little perusing and let me know what you think. Send us a DM.
Yay.
I'm really proud of this.
I'm so excited to smell them and to feel their magic.
They're all going to be ready and waiting for you when you get here. I'm so excited.
I can't wait.
Now give me your soft plug.
Yeah, my soft plug is that I know so many of you DM me from this podcast every single day asking about Reiki training. It's coming back, baby. Registration opens the first week in February for Reiki 1, the Signs of Self-Healing. Madison's doing a dance right now.
I'm doing the wave. I'm doing the one-person wave.
If you're on the wait list, which we will link down in the show notes, you will get early access to join the training. I'm going to be so honest with you right now. This is the most demand I've ever had for Reiki training before, and I do have a limited number of spots. It's a limited number of spots because there is some one-on-one time with me during the small group attunements. And so as much as I would love to do an attunement for every single person listening, I physically would not be able to. So if you are interested in joining, getting on the wait list is the best bet, because then you're going to have a 3-day head start before I post about it on Instagram, before I announce it to my email list and all of that stuff. So details are in the show notes, which if you scroll down, you will see.
Highly, highly recommend.
All right. This was a really good follow-up question. This one came into our Q&A form, which is always linked in the show notes. If you're ever listening and you have a question for us, drop those there because we pull from those first for these episodes. So someone said, I was listening to the intention episode, and the biggest question I always seem to come back to is, how do I know what I want? Setting intention seems like a good idea. Intentions are nice, except I want all the things. I want it to be calm and abundant and lovely and spiritual and connected and joyful day. How do you pick one intention? I see a lot of people saying, oh, stir intention into your morning coffee, but which intention do you choose?
I love this question because this is something that I also struggle with.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I feel like it can often come from a form of a scarcity mindset. Of I can only choose one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And this may not be true for you or for anyone listening, but this is, just my lived experience. This is where it comes from for me. I can sometimes get myself in the space of, I have a finite amount of power and I can only, I have to pick and choose what I use it on, because what if I use it on the wrong thing and I don't get this other thing that I want?
Yeah.
And so maybe that is, you make a sigil that is just, I get everything I want.
Ooh, I like that.
Maybe you make a sigil that is, today is calm and abundant and lovely and spiritual and connected and joyful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or maybe you spread it out throughout the day. I know that, like we've said on the podcast before, a cinnamon coffee is basically an abundance spell, right? So maybe that's where you choose to plug your abundance, or that's where you choose to bring something else in because you're like, oh, my abundance is handled with this cinnamon. I'll use a sigil for protection.
Yeah.
I'll speak my intention of calm.
Mm-hmm.
I'll play a song that makes me feel lovely.
Like taking a deep breath while you're stirring your coffee. Okay, like the deep breath is covering the calm. Maybe you're stirring in the abundance while you're connecting with the spiritual, right? Like, I think at the end of the day, there isn't a wrong way to do it. And I love that you brought up like the scarcity piece, because I hadn't thought of that before. But yeah, I think we've all been in that moment where it's like, it's almost like someone asks you, what do you want for your birthday? And you're like, I don't know. Nothing and everything all at once.
Exactly.
I have 2 recommendations if you feel stuck and are not sure what intention to choose. And the idea of choosing all of them feels overwhelming. The first I call the common denominator. And that is, you look at all of these things that you want. So calm, abundance, spiritual, connected, joyful. What is the common denominator? Why do you not feel calm? Is it because you have some financial stuff going on that is stressing you out? And that's sort of putting a damper on your joy, right? So maybe the abundance is that common denominator that you need to feel more calm, feel more joyful, feel more connected. The other option that I give folks is what I call the domino effect. And so it's sort of like if you lined up all of these intentions, which one would you need to knock over first in order to get momentum to hit the rest of them? So if you are feeling like really overwhelmed and really anxious and just like you can't sort your brain out, you're going to need to tackle that first before you can even think about how to feel connected, how to feel joyful, how to feel spiritual, how to feel abundant, right? So maybe you tackle that first, and then that gives you the momentum to hit the other intentions. So common denominator, whichever one sort of like links them all together, or the domino effect, whichever one will trigger the rest of them.
I love that. I think that, something that I often see like people talk about in therapy is like the feelings wheel, where you like get really specific with your feelings. You can also use that in the reverse of like, am I using 5 words that boil down to calm?
Yeah.
If I can simplify my own language, I can simplify my own intention setting, because I am one to do that, of like pull out all my most flowery language for how I want to feel and what I want to experience. And then I'm like, oh, I just want to have a good day.
Yeah. And I also think like, I know some people will say like, well, good day isn't specific enough. But if you've already had the internal dialogue of like, a good day to me is to be calm and abundant and lovely and spiritual and connected and joyful, like good day now takes on new meaning for you, and you can run with that. So sometimes when I'm not sure what I want my intention to be, I just like kind of verbal diarrhea to myself. And then I just like sum it up as like, yep, I want that. Like, that's what I want.
It's intention inception.
Yes, exactly. So this all comes down to try not to overthink it and just go with what feels right.
You are allowed to have everything that you want.
Yes.
All right. Next up, I love this question because I think we both have an interesting way of answering it. How do I start a book of shadows? Also, what is a book of shadows?
I asked that too. I was like, what is a book of shadows? I don't know what that is. And then you explained it and I was like, oh.
Oh, yeah, I do know that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So a book of shadows, also some people might know it as a grimoire, is literally just a book of spells. It's a written record of any ritual or spell that you've done in the past and want to repeat. It's so it's like a recipe book. It's like a cookbook of magic.
Gotcha. I was just going to give a bad piece of advice.
Please give it. I want to know what it is.
I was going to say, if you're like me and you have ADHD, this doesn't have to be a literal book. This could be like scraps of paper all over your office. But I think that's actually bad advice, because as you're talking, I'm like, yeah, it would probably make more sense if I collected those things in one notebook.
And I guess really like the piece of advice that comes from that is like, it can be a box full of scraps of paper. It could be a binder that you've stuck sticky notes to in the pieces of paper. For me, I am a little bit of an iPad girly. I was off my iPad girly game for quite a while because I got a Kindle, and the Kindle replaced most of my iPad use, because the only other use I have for my iPad is that it is my book of shadows. I have an app it's like basically it's a journal. I can't remember what the app is called, of course, because my iPad is dead in my backpack.
I have it. Good Notes.
Yes. It is Good Notes.
Yes.
Good Notes on my iPad. Little Apple Pencil knockoff from Amazon. And I just use it like a normal journal, because I will lose a book almost immediately. I do have like a notebook that I keep with me in my backpack, whatever, for normal journaling, normal things. But I keep the Book of Shadows separate. And I like it because it's accessible anywhere. I can pull the app up on my phone.
That's so smart.
And so I don't have to travel with something. I know that I like always have everything with me. I will lose a sticky note. Like, I can't be a scrap of paper ADHD person.
Yeah. I only can because I have like a bulletin board that like literally like I'm looking at all of my sigils that I've made. They're just on a scrap of paper, like taped to the bulletin board. And then I also have this drawer right here, which is in my desk, and all it has is dark chocolate. Chocolate.
She's just holding up pieces of candy and shoving them in my face.
Pistachios. There's some cords in here. There's some crystal grids. There's a coaster. There's a remote for my walking pad. And there's also all the recipes for my spell jars. So I know right where it is.
Very easy to locate. It's in my cord and candy and pistachio drawer.
Yeah.
Obviously.
You don't have one of those?
Also, something that you might enjoy, get a whiteboard for making your sigils.
Yes.
Do you have one? Okay.
Yes, I do.
Because if I turn you to the side, I made a sigil right before I left for my mom to print out on my Cricut, so I would have a little sigil on my suitcase. And I have like all along the whiteboard, it's like my to-do list, and then sprinkled within it is like different versions of this sigil, and then my final version. Like it's a holy hot mess.
What we're doing is describing a day in the life of witchy business owners. What our offices look like.
Shove your spell jar recipe in your pistachio drawer. Make your sigil on your whiteboard. Stir 800 intentions into your coffee until it gets cold. And maybe get something done.
That's perfect. So if that helps you start your Book of Shadows.
I don't know if that was helpful at all. Full transparency. Full transparency. We are both unwell right now. I'm not sure what's going on between the two of us. I was just on a plane, so Lord knows what's going through my system. But the energy, I can't even describe what's happening in this moment.
It's really fun. Okay, the person who asked that question about the Book of Shadows had a part 2 to their question, which I really wanted to answer. They wanted to know, can I do spells for my favorite sports team? Because they could really use some luck at the moment. And as soon as I read this, I said, oh, I do Reiki for the Bruins all the time. All the time.
Yeah, I am not a sports girly, so I'm going to defer to Molly on this one.
Yeah, the only thing I know about sports is that Mr. Taylor Swift throws a ball around, and and I watch hockey sometimes, and sometimes I know what's happening. So yes, I want to kind of like open the door of this, of like a bigger conversation that I think is important to have. But when you're doing spells for other people, consent is really important. And if you've listened to the pod forever, you know I was a consent educator for years when I was doing advocacy work for survivors of sexual violence. So I've got a soapbox here that you can take or leave. But consent is really, really important when it comes to energy work, when it comes to spell work. I personally don't do like spells that override the free will of other people. I personally don't believe that those are good spells to do. You might disagree with me, Madison. Other people will probably disagree with me, but I just like, that's not a part of my practice. So when I do Reiki for the Bruins, if I'm watching the Bruins and they're really struggling, I will send Reiki to the team, and I will have the intention of like, may it go where it is welcomed, where is needed, and otherwise go to the earth. Like that's kind of like the caveat that I put on it. And then I just send Reiki to the whoever's on the ice at the time.
No, I don't disagree with you there. I think my opinion is more so that, like, in the same way, the idea with manifesting is you can't manifest something that's not meant for you. I think that applies to all things. I don't think you can influence someone's behavior in a way that they don't want to do. I don't think you can control people.
Yeah, right.
Right. I think about all the times that I would like try to use manifestation and magic to like get jobs that I was not deserving of. Yeah. I didn't get those jobs because at the end of the day, that wasn't what was meant for me.
Yeah. And not to like harp too much on this. This is just the soapbox I like to get on any chance I can get. This is not related to the person who asked this question at all. I just wanted an excuse to talk about this. But for me, like if you've listened to the pod for a while, you know I always say how you do anything is how you do everything. And so if you are doing spell work that you believe can supersede someone's free will, then that contributes to the culture of violence. Because, I mean, my background is in domestic violence, sexual assault awareness. So when it comes to those forms of violence, they're all about one person taking power and control from another person. And we have a culture that allows that to be a pervasive problem and allows that to be a problem that goes unchecked a lot of times. And so I believe when it comes to my practice, my craft, energy work in general, part of my practice is in contributing to a culture where violence is not an option, rather than contributing to a culture that allows violence to continue. So for me, it's really important to add those layers of consent, to add those layers of, talking about these things and to avoid any form of potential manipulation, because, I see these practices as like a form of social justice work in a way, and as a form of like continuing that anti-violence work that I care so deeply about in my non-practice and the rest of my life.
I think that's such an interesting overlap and like a really important thing to point out. But the long and short of it is, yeah, sure, do a little silly spell for your favorite sports team.
Yeah, make them a little spell jar. Why not?
Yeah, could be fun.
I like how we just like bob in and out of like serious and so silly.
I know.
It's like, here's my soapbox, but could be fun.
But could be fun. Next question. Does putting a lid on a spell jar defeat the purpose and trap the magic?
I love this question because I got a bunch of comments about this. I guess there is a reel or a TikTok or something going viral of someone who is like apparently very knowledgeable about witchcraft, about spellcraft, and also is like very traditional, I've been told. I haven't seen the video, so I can't give you much more about it. But this person is basically saying that like glass traps magic. And a lot of people were asking my take on that. And I just feel confused by it because, well, first of all, if you've listened to the podcast, you know I'm a science geek. So like if we look at particle theory and how everything in our world is made up of tiny little particles that are all vibrating at different frequencies, and that's really like how energy work and magic impact us on a physical, emotional, and energetic level, nothing is separate from each other, right? Like the chair that I'm sitting on is just like a denser collection of particles. Like my brain is what fills in the gap and makes it solid. And so there's also, you know, in like my spiritual practice is all about like interconnectedness. So like I am not separate from you or, you know, the wall around me or whatever. So that doesn't make sense to me on that layer. And at the same time, like how I responded to the first person who asked me this was like, if glass traps magic, then how does the full moon affect us when our windows are closed? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, I don't know. What is your take on this?
Really, like a less interesting take is my belief is just what you believe is true. You
Yeah.
know? And so
Same.
if you believe that putting a lid on a spell jar defeats the purpose and traps the magic, then that is true for you. Mm-hmm. But I also believe that has no bearing on what is true for me in my spiritual practice. You know, like I don't abide by that rule, but I don't think that takes the validity from somebody else having that viewpoint or that rule in their spiritual practice. I think that like both things can be true.
Yeah.
We always say that you are the magic, right? Like you're giving the magic to the thing. So if you believe that putting a lid on the jar takes the magic away, then you are physically removing the magic and it then becomes true.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. It's like, if you feel weird about it, then don't do it. But also like, I think this is a broader conversation of like, I don't know, maybe gut check the information that you get, whether it's online, whether it's from us, whether it's from books, whether it's from, you know, your great Aunt Sally. Like, check in with yourself. Does that resonate with me? Why or why not?
Yeah.
And then make choices from there. Because ultimately your spiritual practice is walking you home to that deeper wisdom that's already within you.
Yeah. I think that's a really important part when like the truth is we are not dealing in provable in court fact. Yeah. You know, we are dealing in belief systems that are incredibly nuanced and vary from culture to culture and person to person and day to day. Yeah. Within those people, you know? And so I think that there's a lot of like tension that can come from that paired with this like black and white thinking that I see a lot in the way that we operate in social media, where it's like, oh, this person says that this traps magic and therefore I am stupid for having believed it. And I must, you know, I have to change my belief system to fit what they're saying because they know a lot about what they know a lot about.
Yeah.
And so I think I am very take everything that you see regarding spirituality on the internet with a grain of salt. Give it a goog, learn a little bit more about it, read what that person is reading, you know? Yeah. If you see someone citing sources saying this is where I read about this thing, read about it and see how it makes you feel. For me personally, a spell jar, it has a lid on it because the energy and the magic is staying centered and contained near me where I want it. It's like a magnet and I keep that magnet close to me. But that also doesn't make that fundamentally true either, you know?
Yeah. It's kind of like, do what works for you. Honestly, like, I always think it's like so interesting when people get really heated about like the right and wrong in like magical practices. Yeah. Like, if you're not hurting anyone and it works for you, who the fuck cares?
Exactly. Outside, I get like, I feel kind of weird talking about it because I never want anything that I say to be taken in the context of like, all this goes out the window when we're talking about cultural appropriation.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. 100%.
You know, I don't want you to take that sound clip of me saying, take what you hear with a grain of salt and think that that applies to all things, because it doesn't. But when it's just like, you know, I think like it's like, you know, on Wednesdays we wear pink.
Yeah.
I don't. That was
Yeah.
awful.
Well, I think it's like it comes back to that piece. If it's not harming anyone
Mm-hmm.
and it works for you, who the fuck cares?
Yeah.
Cultural appropriation is different because it causes harm.
Mm-hmm. But the lid on your spell jar isn't hurting anyone. And so if you like it, keep doing it.
Yep. All right. Next question is, do people have to be open to accept Reiki to feel the benefits? Can you ethically, logistically send distance Reiki to someone if they aren't aware? This is such a good question. And I think this goes back to what we were talking about with the Bruins, which is a segue I didn't know I'd be making today.
That wasn't on your 2024 bingo card.
Yeah. So essentially how Reiki provides the benefits that provides, how it relieves stress, reduces pain, it helps manage anxiety, overthinking, all of that helps us relax, is because of the impact on the nervous system. Right. If you've listened to our episode, it was one of our first episodes. It's called Not Just Woo Woo, the Science of How Reiki Works. We talk a lot about how your nervous system with Reiki flips from that survival or stress response into that relaxation response. And the thing is that a lot of times there's this misconception that people believe when they go to a Reiki session, they're being healed by the person who's offering them Reiki. And that's just not the case. As a Reiki practitioner, I am a channel. So I'm not healing you at all. I'm just holding the space. Really what's happening is Reiki is flowing through me. And then you, on a cellular level, are taking that energy and they're like, ooh, give me that. I'll put that here. Ooh, I need that over here. Ooh, I'll take that and do this with it. And sending it through the rest of your body. And so if someone is not aware, logistically, what happens is our nervous system kind of puts shields up. Because again, if you've listened to that episode, your brain assumes the unknown is a threat until proven otherwise. And so if you have energy coming at you that you are not aware of, not accepting, you are not just going to welcome that in willy-nilly, right? Without informed consent. And so logistically, it doesn't really work. That's why I say, like, if you're going to send it to maybe someone that you can't specifically ask permission, like the Bruins, you put that caveat on that it goes where it's wanted and needed, or it goes to the earth. In my level 2 training, when I teach this, I teach that as well as how to ask for energetic permission. So I always say, like, if you feel that energetic permission is not there on top of that intention, then you stop. Ethically, I also don't think it's right to send distance Reiki to someone if they aren't aware, unless you put that caveat on it, unless you put that sort of like wherever it's wanted and needed, or send it to the earth.
Retweet.
But I also think, like, part of the rest of this question, this person gave us some personal information, so we're not going to read it out. But I think part of this question is also asking, like, can distance Reiki work if someone is like open to it but skeptical of it? And the answer is yes, if they are open to it. No, if they are like in that judgmental skepticism place. If they're like, no matter what, this is bullshit, I would not recommend sending them distance Reiki. But if they're like, I don't really get this, but like I'm willing to try it, then yeah, I would go for it. And that's on that.
And that's that on that. Our final question is one I'm excited to hear you talk about.
Hey.
Since this is a relatively new revelation, how long did it take you to accept the label of witch, and was that hard for you?
I don't think I accepted the label of witch until like 3 months ago, if I'm being honest. Yeah, I talked about it on the podcast before, but I truly did not know that witches existed. Mm-hmm. Like, I truly thought it was just like unicorns. Like, yeah, people think they exist, but like, do they? You know? And I also, believed that the term witch was like, if someone was labeled a witch, there was like some sort of like prejudice and othering going on too, just because, like I grew up so close to Salem, and that's kind of the only thing I've ever heard of witches. And so it was honestly through this podcast that I got comfortable-ish with the label. I don't know if I would go up to someone and like shake their hand and be like, hi, I'm Molly, I'm a witch. That doesn't really feel right to me. But like I've come to terms with like referring to what I do as like witchy. I do have a t-shirt now that says feminist witch on it, and it is my favorite shirt of all time. And I've gotten comfortable with like, people calling me a witch, But yeah, I don't know. It was definitely hard for me. I think I had like my own internalized misogyny that I had to work through, to be honest with you. And like my own internalized, like, I had this idea that like witches were manipulative.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I had to work through. I think it's because my only other experience with witches before I met you, Madison, was like on TikTok and seeing like some of the gross, like there are some great witches on TikTok, but there are also some like really gross stuff on there that I think is a little bit ethically sus. And that was my only relationship with witchcraft for a while. So I think honestly, like this podcast is how I started to come around on that label, is like hearing from so many of you that this podcast gave you the confidence to accept your witchiness and accept that label for yourself. I think helped me accept it for myself as well.
It's been so fun to watch you go into your witch cocoon and emerge
Witch
a witch
cocoon.
butterfly.
Witch butterfly.
What's funny is that I feel like I had a similar experience, but from an entirely different lens, if that makes sense. Like if you listen to the pod, you know I grew up very witchy, but my mom never used the word witch. And so I had to get comfortable with other people identifying me that way. Because I'm the same way. Like, I don't walk up to people and say, hi, my name's Madison, I'm a witch. I don't, like, it's not a part of my personal identity. And I think that's almost because it is so intrinsic to who I am.
Yeah.
That my first instinct isn't to label it.
Mm-hmm.
I often will just say, like, I'm a person having a spiritual experience, you know? And if people will come into the store, and it's often honestly, like, said in a joking way, it's usually like a crystal girly's dad being like, oh, so you guys the witches? And in that context, I'll be like, yes, mister. We're the weirdos, mister. But outside of that, I don't really see a ton of necessity to label myself in that way.
Yeah.
Like there aren't, you know, it's not like on a job application, they're asking you to check off witch or not, you know, like. And people aren't like walking up to you asking in normal life, you know.
Yeah.
Are you a witch or are you, you know.
Are you a good witch or are you a bad witch?
Yes.
I'm not a witch at all.
That doesn't quite happen very often. And so it has never felt super important to me to label myself that way.
Yeah.
And through the podcast, I have really seen how it is important to a lot of people who did not grow up that way.
Yeah.
To have something tangible like that. And that has given me a different perspective on it and has made me more accepting of the title for myself.
Yeah. I remember when we recorded the intro, literally like over a year ago now. I was like, I really think you should call yourself a born and raised witch because that's what I call you. And you were like, I don't know.
Yeah, because it's just like never language that I ever would have used until you put me in that. Like for me, witch is the best word to describe what's going on here, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Like I'm sitting at my desk, I have a spell candle lit and a little bowl of crystals. And there's just not many other words for what I'm doing here other than witchcraft, you know? I cannot deny what is in front of me. If it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's probably a witch.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't even realize that it was something that I was thinking about, that people were making that assumption about me until like small moments like that, like the podcast, like us making the intro for the podcast and saying, oh yeah, born and raised witch, because like, what else am I going to say?
Yeah. I know. We tried to workshop other options and I was like, there's no other option.
A girl whose mom had an altar her whole life. Like, what else do you call that? But my mom, who's listening, hi mom, I'm going to air your dirty laundry. She's had to do a lot of work with that word from, I think, the same place of there's a lot of baggage attached to that word.
Yeah.
Of like, you know, it's a certain type of woman who's a witch and you don't want to be that type of woman.
Yeah. As I'm sitting here, I'm also thinking about like, oh, what did my mom tell me about witches? And I very distinctly remember we were not allowed to have ugly witches as Halloween decorations because my mom went to like, she took us to like this church a couple of times that was like sort of like they would have different religions come in and talk. I don't know. I was very young. I don't remember it at all. They had a Wiccan come in and talk about like how the stereotype of like ugly, warty witches is bad. And my mom like really like took that to heart. But I think that like that made me believe, I think for a long time that like, oh, witches are religious. Like it's a religion.
Yeah.
And I get
that
a
lot. Yeah. A lot of people ask me if I'm Wiccan or like equate the two words.
Yeah. I don't. Do you?
No, they're very much not the same.
Yeah. Glad we got that out of the way.
Yeah, like to be Wiccan is to have rules. There are,
Yeah.
I don't know another word. Is it like a rule? Being raised without religion.
Yeah, I have no idea.
It is a blessing, but I do feel like a big dumb dummy so often.
Yeah. We have a couple of religious scholars that listen to the podcast that have DM'd me before. So if you are listening and you could explain to us.
And if you could tell me if the word rule is being used in the correct context here.
Slide into the DMs.
Yes. But yeah, that is all of our questions for today. I love doing these episodes.
Yeah, they're so fun.
It's such a fun way to feel like we're getting to know you guys too. And like what you guys love to hear about and what is like really resonating for you guys through the podcast, because it's almost always like asking us to continue on something that we've spoken about before. And it's just so fun. I feel like we could do a whole series of Q&As just from what we got in response to like asking for questions this time. If you have questions, please submit them in the Google form in the show notes. And you can find all of our links and all of our things there as well, like shopspellcrafter.com and the waitlist for Reiki training.
Yeah, I can't wait to quantum leap out of here. Is it quantum leap or quantum jump?
It's quantum jump, but you can call it quantum leap. I'm
gonna quantum jump on out of here.
I'm gonna quantum hop, hop, scoot, and jump.
And on that note,
bye.
Thanks for listening to Demystify Magic with Molly and Madison. If you want to learn more about us, you can find all our links in the show notes.
We'd love to know what you think of today's episode, so drop us a review or give us a shout out on social media. And don't forget to let us know your magical moment of the week. Okay, love you. Bye.